Okay, so we're gonna pick back up. I am now your new Amy Hinote. My name is Dawn Yeskulsky. I think I know a lot of you, but I recently, I'm also a vendor supplier, but I recently made a big change. A lot of you may know me, I was with Ascent Processing for about 10 years, and I just recently moved to Track. So I'm the new Senior Vice President of Global Business Development. It's a mouthful. But I'm super excited about that. But I am taking off that hat right now, and I'm just up here. Please, guys, don't shoot the messenger. I've compiled a list of questions from everybody out there that they want you to answer. So it's not coming from me. So please don't get angry with me later on. So we want to kind of pick up where we left off before about how the API process, how it goes. I mean, where does it start? Does it start with the actual PM coming to you? Does it start with ideas from different vendor partners? So we want to kind of go into that process a little deeper. And before we do that, I had a question out there, and I think it's more of a high-level question that we need to get out of the way before we actually get into the specifics. So as far as, if anybody in here was in Ben Edwards' session prior to this, Ben really hit upon the point that there's automation now for everything. Everything is a third party. So if you're a new PM looking to come into our market, is there really a barrier? Because now, according to the PMs, you need a property management system, you need revenue management tools, you need activities, you need virtual tours, you need smart home automation. So all of that has a cost associated with it. So now your PMS is not just your biggest cost. Now you've got all of those additional third parties on top of it that just add to it. So does that prevent PMs from saying, okay, I have 10 properties, I'd really like to grow to 50 to 75, but I don't have all of these tools. Can I really successfully do it? And can I compete against the big companies if I don't have all these tools? So I'd like you guys to weigh in on that to see if that is something that you think is real out in our industry, or if it's...
I think we have a real sort of two different ways of looking at things. One of them is the all-in-one approach, and one of them is the ancillary service approach. And then you've got the combinations of everything in between. Typically, when you get into the all-in-one approach, you lose a little bit of functionality because that company's not solely focused on just that one product. They're sort of focused on, let's say, 10 products. If you get into the all-in-one approach, you're typically going to save money. So you've got a sort of balance between, do you spend a ton of money on 10 different services, let's say, or do you go for an all-in-one approach and try to get multiple different services tacked onto that? So there's really no perfect answer for anyone. I think that everyone's goal would be to be in a all-in-one solution that met all their needs. But I think for the amount that our property management softwares are trying to charge to the industry, I think that a lot of people have gone to ancillary services. If we were to come up here and say, okay, we're going to charge you $50 a unit or $40 a unit, we could probably get closer to a real all-in-one solution that you don't need much else on top of your core PMS. And at the end of the day, you might save money, but there's value in everything because innovation comes from a lot of different areas in our industry, and leveraging it, and like Ed said, providing choice is a very important thing for our whole space moving forward, which comes back to the value of the API.
I just want to add to that a little bit as well. We're all small companies, including you as well, and we can only be experts at so many things. And as time goes by, the longer you're in business, you become experts at more of those things. But still, the world is changing. So it's a very difficult process to actually be really good at all of these things. I would say most of us kind of act as ERP systems, enterprise resource programs to some degree, where while we may not do everything, but what we try to do is to try and bring as much synergy and connection with these things so that you don't have multiple dashboards. At least this is something that we really focus on, is we want to be in the center of your universe, and third parties seamlessly connect in with us. And I know, we all kind of do some of that stuff as well. So it's not as simple as, do we do it all? It's, can we manage it all to make it easier for you so you don't have 50 dashboards up there and they're not connected and so on?
Yeah, but look, you're 10-unit property, right? And you're sitting here, and a guy like Steve or Paul Wolford or these people are running these large organizations. You're going, holy crap, I got to buy all this software, right? And you really don't, right? If you got 10 property, like, you're an entrepreneur. Like, use Excel spreadsheet. It's okay, and there's different life cycles. Like, look at Airbnb. Scott Belsky literally flew to New York and was taking pictures of his properties because he realized that better pictures drove higher conversion rate. That was back in 2008 when Airbnb just launched. So it's okay to do things that don't scale when you're early on in your company, and you find ways to manufacture growth, and eventually as you move through those different phases, you can afford to add on those tools. You can afford to upgrade your software. You can afford to upgrade your people and all those things. So I don't think just because the technology is there, you could buy Track as a small company and never use 60% of the stuff in there because A, you might not need it yet, and B, you probably don't have the people to actually do it. So why buy it then, right?
I would say that it's easy to be overwhelmed with opportunity as a new property manager. You walk through the vendor showcase and there's all of these great tools, and it's hard to decide which one would be the right fit for your business. Early on, my recommendation would be to buy the PMS, your software platform, and use the base functionality that's provided. All of our systems have reservation modules, housekeeping, maintenance, owner portal tools, revenue management tools. They're all built in within the software today. And get comfortable learning how to run your business as a business using the tools that are provided. You can always go out and add additional services. You can always go out and spend more money. These guys will certainly let you do it. But in the beginning, just be happy having a base level system that's able to do almost everything that you need. Then as your company grows and adds complexity, you can always add additional partners that allow you to achieve the goals that you're trying to reach with your business.
See, I have a little bit of a different opinion on this in the sense of a lot of the smaller companies we work with are very great companies that are just trying to stay lean and mean. So they might have, we have one guy actually out of this area has, I think, 70 properties, and he's the only employee. So I think that a lot of these companies that are small, they might have 1, 2, 3 people, but they don't want to grow. They just want to have systems they dig into, and they're some of the smartest companies that we have, actually, as some of those smaller companies. So I think it depends on the company, not so much the size of the company, because we have people that adopt 95% of our system that have 20 units, and we have some large companies that adopt, let's say, 30, 40% of the system because they're just that tech savvy. So I think that generally the barrier of entry, the good thing is there's so many options, and there's a little bit, it's easier these days to get in than it was in the past for sure and have sophistication. But I think that maybe 30, 40% of the smaller companies have that level of sophistication to do it themselves and get that to the level of a larger company.
One additional piece of advice as a small player out there, don't 100% try and compete with a big guy. Learn from them, but understand your niche. One of the things I like to emphasize to my clients, even though they tend to be larger, is how do you become the company that puts your company out of business or possibly the competitor and so on. So look for where you are strong, understand your market, and focus on that and grow with the people that you like the most. Because this is a relationship business, so it really does come down to niche. Understand what is important to those homeowners, provide those services and the technology, and then grow into the other things.
Everyone in here is a property manager, and you're going to be pitched on the shiny new toy. And I will tell you, I say no all the time, and even on the ones that we eventually go with, I want to really understand the ROI. And I don't make a decision to go with a vendor until I get the ROI. And the vendors we've gone with, I'll give you some examples, we get multiple ROIs. So we're with Be Home 247. And not only do they do our smart locks, but they're also, they've got a cleaning module. So for the same price, we're able to manage cleaning, we're able to manage home automation. We moved from Navis to Pulse in part because Navis was ridiculous and expensive and terrible technology, but also, if that's not enough, they wouldn't allow us to run our entire business on Navis. So we're using Pulse not only for front end, but also for back end. So we're monitoring the calls, the abandonment rate, not just on reservations, but on operations, service desk, et cetera. So you've got to really look at tools that you can leverage over multiple functions. And one of the things we've done is we don't want to have 10 different tools because all these things cost money. And you need to be really smart. And I've talked to people that are smart out here, and I'm like, they're with Beyond Pricing, and I'm like, well, okay, what's the ROI? They can't answer it. Well, if you're going to give 1% of your revenue to Beyond Pricing, you better be able to understand what the ROI is. So if I ask you what the ROI is, you should have an answer. If you don't have an answer, then you haven't done your homework, and you shouldn't have made that purchase.
Okay. So as software providers, you're all bombarded, we all know, with API requests. Everybody wants to integrate with you. So where do you determine, or how do you determine what is best to outsource to a third party or to improve internally? Say, Matt, your example about the housekeeping module. What would make you say, okay, we're going to integrate with Breezeway, instead of just saying, okay, what do they have as far as features that we do not have in our own housekeeping module? And that way you're developing your core product and you're not having to rely on a third party. So how does the decision-making process occur where you decide it's in the best interest of your company to go with that third party? And I didn't mean to talk to you, Matt.
I mean, we talk to a lot of people. You know, we talk to our customers. We talk to the customer that wants it. Are there multiple customers that want that? You know, we don't build custom software. You know, we build enterprise software. So we have to, when someone comes to us and says we want to integrate this, we stop and say, okay, why? Okay, how are you doing that? Is that the best way to do that, or are you just doing that because you've always done that? Is there a different way to solve that problem? Is that really the best software to solve that problem? Because we don't have a problem, you know, giving Breezeway, which we have done, access to our API and letting them pull data out and know when people are checking out so they can fire their work orders and everything like that. You can certainly do that in track. But that's how we do it, is we look at it in the broader context of how we're architecting the software, how we're trying to solve the problem, and we don't want to just solve the problem for just you, no offense to you, right? We want to solve the problem for the greater good, and you know, you have to consider those things and ultimately make a call and move forward.
The reason this is a tricky question is because, fortunately for us, our industry is very complicated. People from the hotel industry or other industries don't really understand how complicated our industry is. And the reason it's complicated is because everybody has different business models. So no matter if I think we have the greatest housekeeping property care app in the world and 100 other property managers do also, there's another 100 that think that it should be done differently. So I think that that's why choice is so important, because it's not just building a great product, it's building a great product that meets different business models. So you have to try to support outside entities and your own, because unless you plan to develop your system, your CRM, your property care, your accounting, your revenue management system, all in multiple different ways, you can't solve everything for everybody.
It's about reaching out and understanding the needs of your customers. And you know, my answer to your question is we do both. You know, we build the tools inside the software, but then we also want to do the integrations to allow you to have the choice to work with the partners that you want to, that's going to help your business succeed.
So one of the things we did want to talk about is choice. So it's no surprise in the industry that there's been a lot of acquisitions. There's been a lot of companies rolling up together. And for those companies that have rolled together under the same corporate entity, or I don't know how you want to phrase it, same ownership, is there going to be, and maybe this is a loaded question, so I'm sorry, is there going to be cross-selling on the backside? And is it really going to remain a level playing field? Or are we going to start seeing companies push other companies, not because of the best interest of the PM, but maybe because there's a different agenda? And I'm going to add to that, sorry. Are there going to be certain APIs that dry up as a result of this as well?
Well, I can tell you it's already happening, and we've been threatened, right? Because we're not part of said group. And that's just real, So, but I think this industry, just like in any other industry, there's always going to be roll-ups. There's always going to be consolidation. It's a well-known game plan. And I think just like Apple can work with Microsoft, certainly, these businesses can and do work together. So, just because you point someone in a direction and say, hey, go use this product instead of this product because they're part of our group and we have some incentive or whatever it might be, doesn't necessarily mean that the PM is going to choose to do that.
We've got a pretty significant partner program. We've been doing this for a really long time. I haven't had that situation yet. Who's to say it might not happen? But at this point, obviously we're asking the questions, and any of the buy-ups. How is this going to affect our relationship? It's very important, not only just connection-wise, but from a data security side of things as well.
Look, anyone who is not paying attention to who owns the company, who really owns these entities and what their agenda is being naive. And that was part of our decision-making as well in terms of ultimately, when we entered with Trax, is we want to be careful, and also in our contract, with ultimately, Ed talked about it, data privacy, who has access to the data, what are the companies are in the portfolio that might compete with us or might use certain assets to compete against us. With HomeAway now being owned by Expedia, things changed, and not for the better, actually. So hopefully now with new leadership, maybe they'll go back to the way they were when Brian Sharples was running the company. But these are real questions. When I talked earlier today, I talked about culture. And one of the things that, you can check all the boxes of the company that you do business with or want to do business with, but you really need to make sure you understand the culture at that company and who owns them and what is their agenda, how transparent they've been, and have they come out and have they been willing to talk about issues, or are they hiding? And when people hide, I get concerned.
Does anyone else have any questions out there? Because we don't want this to just be up here. It is meant as an open forum. So please, if you have any questions whatsoever, just raise your hand. We'll bring a mic out to you. And
it's hard to switch software. We get a lot of questions. People in the room, obviously, there's a large percentage of people who would like to switch. And as potential recipients of it on both ends, do you see any potential for it getting easier to switch? A lot of people come up and say, I would have switched if it was easier. You guys have the opportunity each to pick up clients and the potential to lose clients. And right now it's just hard. And I imagine some of that is intended and some of that is something you want to go away. Do you guys see any chance that it gets easier to switch, or is it just a necessary part of competition to keep it hard to switch?
Well, I can answer some of that. Look, depending on what system you're in, it's going to make a huge difference as to how fast you can transition. So if you're in a system that is a mess, like LiveRes, it's going to be very difficult to transition you over. It's not to say it's impossible, but it's not an easy system to migrate from. So, when you're making decisions, and I will say a positive thing about V12, it's a very structured database that is relatively straightforward as opposed to Escapia, which was a mess on the database side. So, V12 is clean and a lot easier to transfer data over. And look, there's certain system architects in this industry who are agnostic or neutral, like Tom Leddy, and they will shoot you straight as to the companies, the property management systems that are good databases fundamentally, that'll be easy to transfer from. And I know each of you have stories of the worst database you've ever tried to transfer in, and I mean, some of it ends up having to be manual, which is a nightmare.
It's interesting because a couple of years ago, there were really no conversations about, transitioning software and so on, although it was happening all over the place. Having conversations like this, realizing that these things are complicated, and getting an expectation out front, this is going to take 90 days. This is going to take you 2 or 3 hours a week at least, and you have homework, and you have videos to watch, and you need to, not miss meetings and so on. And you need to think about where you're going, not where you've been in regards to switching software. That's one of the reasons, what's one of the great things about switching software is it gives you the opportunity to raise your head up and go, where do I want to be instead of where have I been? But if you don't have that conversation with yourself and with the software company, then shame on you. And that's probably why a couple of years ago, it seemed like everybody was switching software every 2 or 3 years because it just seemed to be the way of the world. So it's about understanding that this is complicated, setting an expectation with whoever is going to provide the software, and having a true conversation, an ongoing conversation about that, because it is a complicated process.
I think one of the really smart things that Steve is doing, and we're seeing other people do it, is hiring people from outside to come in and help lead the transition as their full-time job. One of the mistakes we've seen companies do is they go into the transition and they try to have their highly, highly valuable, most likely some of their highest compensated people in the company focus on that rather than doing their job. And so that's when it starts to become really painful, because those people are probably killing themselves to try to get this done. And so I think you can't think about the cost of your software transition as just the cost of the software. You need to think about where you are in the life cycle of your company, and do you need to hire someone or multiple people to come in and actually lead the integration.
I mean, when people are considering Escapia as a software platform, I'm very honest with them. I tell them it's like getting a brain transplant and a hip replacement at the same time, And if anybody tells you implementation to a new software is easy, they're not telling you the truth. It's a complicated process with a ton of data that has to be accurate and has to be correct. Your accounting has to be accurate, it has to be correct. Your trust accounts have to balance. I mean, all of those things are an important part of the transition, but with Escapia, through our software strategy changes that we've made, we are developing new transition tools to be able to help migration of data from legacy systems into Escapia. And so those are things that are currently under development and tools that we're building. But we know it's very important, but it has to be done accurately, it has to be done correctly, and at some point, there's really only 1 or 2 ways to do that. And having the right team and the right people that's there to help you with that transition is super important. And if you're large enough to be able to hire an outside person like a Tom Leddy or someone along those lines, certainly do it, because it's going to make the transition way easier. But for most of you, that's probably not realistic. So therefore, we want to make sure that we have a team in place to help you with that transition to the best of our ability.
Brett, I want to put you in the hot seat here for a second,
right.
because I didn't get
I was gonna go there.
your weigh in. So being one of the software companies that was part of an acquisition, can you tell us how that has affected your decision-making ability as to what other companies to partner with? Or has there been any pressure or directive from above to change any of the existing partnerships that you might have had?
So I think first and foremost, people look at investment in this space as something people are scared of. I think that when you take on an investor and you get into the world of dealing with people that have been through many things, you learn to grow from that, and I think it's streamlined. We've grown a lot from having an additional entity involved in our business, and I think it's really made us go from junior high level to pro level very fast. So before we start talking about all the negatives and the fear factor behind investment, I think it's been very positive for us. Secondly, I'd be more concerned about the unknown about a company that hasn't been invested in, because they can be invested in at any given moment, which is going to happen for pretty much anybody in the software game, unless they plan to sort of ride off into the sunset. But I think that inherently you're going to have tendencies to work with people that you work close with, whether it's great partnership agreements through rev shares with people that are in your organization, or partnership agreements that are people that are outside of your organization. So I think it's a situation where you could look at that in many different ways, right? We've historically not been aligned with certain companies because we have crossover products. We've historically, and even within people that have had the same investor, even have misalignments, and we have more natural alignments with other people. So I think you can look at every fear factor in the industry when it comes to investment, but we're proud of our group. We know that they've been great people, great mentors, good leaders for us, and we get closer every day. But I think that there is an opportunity for that to happen, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's where it's going to go.
Yeah, like investment's not a bad thing, right? That's the point. But it's what is your strategy, right, with the investment? And roll-ups have been going on for years in every market, and bundling and unbundling. At the end of the day, it's what's, like Steve said, what's the culture of the company? What are their goals? Where are they headed? Who's leading it? If your goal is to get into something, and your business plan is to start something, I don't care what business you're in, start something, build it to a certain point, sell it within a certain point, then you make decisions with different motivations because you have a specific strategy in mind. If you're trying to build an evergreen, long-lasting company for 20 or 30 or 50 years or whatever, then you're making strategy decisions and investment decisions differently, and both are okay models. You just got to decide who do you want to align yourself with as far as making the decision to purchase their products or use their services or whatever for your own company.
It's culture, it's leadership. I mean, I'm happy that Verbo made a change with leadership, and I hope that, through actions, not just words, they get back to being a more supplier-friendly company. But all these companies up here, it's leadership. And you need to understand who ultimately is writing the checks and managing the money, and how transparent they are, how willing they are to discuss their mistakes, which everyone up here has made. Everyone has made mistakes. But are they willing to admit to it? Are they willing to own it? And what are they going to do to fix it? That's what I want to know. I don't care so much that they made mistakes. I don't want them to hide the mistakes. I don't want them to try to, say, well, we didn't make a mistake. I want to know, because when you're in a relationship with these companies, there's going to be trouble. There's going to be problems. There's going to be strains. And how the leadership handles things is going to tell you how that relationship's going to be. And if you have bad leadership, you're going to have bad problems.
I think this industry's always revolved around trust, and that's something I think beautiful about our industry. And I don't see that changing, because I think that our industry of what it is, experience, vacation rentals, family, friends, everything that our industry drives is built around relationships and experience. So as big as we get, I don't see that changing much. And I think that anybody who invests in this space is going to learn our space quickly, and hopefully get to a point where they embed themselves into our culture, whether it's Expedia, whether it's an investment company, whatever it is. I think that our industry is so powerful and so strong on that level that people eventually, hopefully, like Steve said, get to the point where we're all able to trust what's going on around us.
Now, during the break, Amy and I were having a conversation, and the topic of data security came up. So, Amy, I'll let you ask that question, because you had a much better way of presenting it.
The API article that's in the magazine, some of the interviews I did with the third is there, I mean, providing access through the API, are there security protocols in place with new third-party providers that provide security for your guest data and your owner data?
I mean, that was part of our RFP. I mean, we talked about change logs and user permissions and tiered user permissions and customizable user permissions. I mean, this is a big deal. This is a very, very big deal. So anyone who doesn't think that this is not a big deal, it's like not taking on insurance. So, we also talked about restoration and how to, revert someone if they did something. But, there's really two issues, really. User permissions, and they need to be tiered and they need to be customized, and you need to be able to really be as nuanced as you need to be for your user permissions. And then the second thing you asked was change logs. And those change logs need to be incredibly detailed because of both on the user side and then on the API side, so that if you see issues, you have a trail and you can go back and fix. And again, it was one of the number one things, we asked. Track certainly, answered it. They're not perfect with what they have today, but they do have a milestone. And I think what you're asking is critically important, because there potentially are going to be system failures as a result of unintended API consequences or user consequences, and being able to know what happened and being able to revert that data back is mission critical to getting you back up.
And one of the, so it's a little kind of play on words, but a lot of, just on the security side of things, a lot of companies say we're PCI compliant, right? That doesn't mean you're PCI certified, right? And you have to go through a very rigorous process of not just your software, but your company protocols, there's a lot of, how many companies in here have actually gone through PCI certification? All right, so just because your software is certified doesn't mean you're certified, right? It's a two-way street. So I think, making sure that you do have a good conversation with the people that are in charge of this. We have systems people that are in charge of our data security. We just went through the process again to renew our certification in PCI, and don't let someone fool you by saying, oh yeah, we're compliant, or we're PCI compliant, or we, see the actual documentation. Have them walk you through what is your data recovery process. All these things are important, and they are overlooked by most buyers, because most buyers don't ask us. I'll just tell you that. We actually bring it to them and we say, hey, just so you know, we are this or we are that. You may not be thinking about it, but you should be thinking about it.
You should be thinking about it.
Most of our clients are larger, and they play either, for example, Long & Foster's part of Berkshire Hathaway. So that's a public company. So they require questionnaires and reviews of documentation and so on. Marriott, if any of you guys are thinking about working with Marriott, not only are you, whoever you're connecting through to Marriott has to be approved, but they will also ask you a whole slew of questions about how are you protecting things. Some of it is based off of the software side of things, and some of it is based off of what are your best practices. Because again, all of these systems, we all have comment sections, and somebody could put a passcode, a credit card number, or any of those types of things in there. PCI should catch that, but it may not if you do certain things. But the bottom line is they're going to hold you accountable for all of these things as well, because they are held accountable. With the California laws, with GDPR, well, that's mostly in Europe and so on, but it's all getting very gray. You need to take this incredibly serious. You should be asking us, are we doing what's correct? And we should be helping you to navigate through the pieces that you need to continue to be successful and to grow if you want to do Marriott, any of these other types of programs as well.
So I'm going to put back on my payment processing hat for just about 2 seconds and chime in about PCI. because there is a misnomer that if the software company or your technology provider is PCI certified, that you don't have to do anything else, and that is absolutely not true. Every company in the United States that has an outward-facing IP address, which is pretty much everyone here, is required to go through PCI, to be PCI certified. So a lot of times in the payment processing side, we did not see hacks or breaches occur at the software level. It wasn't some 13-year-old sitting in the basement hacking into, HomeAway or into Streamline. It was more the types of breaches that we were seeing were, for example, a number of years ago, there was something going on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where the Russian mafia actually placed people in reservation staff positions throughout various companies. And during the course of high season, booking season, those employees captured thousands and thousands of credit card numbers. So it's a lot of time those breaches are you hire a new reservation staff person. You think she's wonderful. She's doing great, no issues, but you have no idea that all those reservations she's taking over the phone. She's also copying down that card number and going home and selling it online or shopping with QVC or something like that.
So the moral of the story is, in your interview, ask them if they're part of the Russian mafia.
Russian mafia.
It sounds like a movie, actually.
I swear to you, it is not a movie. Anybody have any questions specific for anyone up here that pertains to their software? I mean, this is your opportunity to kind of put them on the hot seat if you use one of their platforms or are considering moving over to one of their platforms.
They're either using one of them and don't want that person to know they're going to do that.
This is true.
What is legacy software?
Well, it's a software that's probably not going to be around for much longer, in my opinion. I think as soon as you're in legacy mode, you're in like the client retention, stopping innovation, no longer trying to meet the changing needs of the industry and the marketplace. And I think you've seen that a lot in our industry, and I think that's why these decisions are actually getting easier for people than harder in our industry, because you've got this upper pyramid of softwares that you can tell are still innovating. They're still thinking about the industry and how it's changing. And then you've got a lot of companies where innovation is sort of halted. And I think that if you're talking legacy, it doesn't mean you're going to be gone the next year or 2 years, but maybe 5, 10 years. It's pretty obvious if someone isn't innovating and their goal is to just stay as stable as possible, then I would define that as a legacy.
I think there are 1 or 2 FRS customers still out there. It's a perfect example of it. It's getting harder to find hardware, but somehow they do it.
And innovation in general in our space is, I mean, property managers have to understand that they want a lot from us. They want us to solve the problems of a very, very intricate business that has a lot of challenges. Turnover for 300 units that are checking in and out on a Saturday. 1,000 leads coming in a week. You've got a lot of things. So when we named our company Streamline in the first place, we knew that's what you needed. And I think that everyone on this stage is mostly innovating rapidly at this point, or if not, it's pretty much time to go to sleep.
What advice could you give the new property management software systems that are popping up these days?
I mean, this is something, I had so many companies approach us telling us that they could build an enterprise system. And I mean, it was hard not to laugh at some of them because they didn't even begin when they first created their system to even think about enterprise. So a lot of the people in this room, and maybe not this vendor hall, but if you're at VRMA, there were people representing all kinds of software systems. And you have to understand, there's really 2 paths right now. The easy path is to build software for Airbnb host, because all they need is reservations and distribution. That is not an enterprise system. That's not even a property management system. And there's been a number of companies who have built these systems because they're fast and they're quick and they're easy to build and they have a lot of bells and whistles that look great, but they fundamentally don't have an accounting system. So the first thing I would tell a new company is, what's your end goal? If you're here to build enterprise systems, you need to start at the core, like Escapia did when Chris Kemp and those guys built Escapia. They hired some of the most talented people in the industry, and they built, at that time, Escapia was state of the art when they built the thing, and it was built around an accounting system. I think it was Evan Gall that was the genius behind the accounting system there. So are you an enterprise system? If you are you going to invest the time and resources into the accounting system, because that's where everything starts? If you're not, and you're just a reservation system, and you're talking about, oh, we're going to add accounting, good luck. And unless they've received funding like a Guesty, it's going to be very difficult after the fact to toggle on an accounting system. Accounting's not something you just do spur of the moment. So, you either decide at the beginning and raise the money and hire the talents that can build accounting systems and truly be able to scale to an enterprise system, or you're a reservation system.
I think that from an accounting perspective, you mentioned investing in an accounting system, et cetera. One thing we've learned over the years, because we onboarded many, many thousands of properties in North Carolina, is you have to actually truly invest in your accounting system, even beyond just building it. We've in the past 6 months to a year or so, we've really invested in QA, which is really running tests against your system to keep it honest. So if you're gonna balance and you're gonna protect your system, not even allowing the property managers to toggle things that impact their system, right? So figuring out ways through not just the building and investing on the building, but actually really refining and testing your system against itself to make sure that everything is exact is so much further than some of these young companies out. And the funny thing to me is, back to Jason's question, is a lot of people are attracted to easy, right? They're attracted to a software transition that's easy. Like, oh, we can get you live in 30 days, we'll put your properties in, everything's gravy, all's good. Well, that pretty much means that there's no bulk behind their system. So if you're trying to get a system that lasts, then what should be everyone's goal is to try to get a system that withstands the test of time. Don't look for easy. Look for intuitive, intelligent, and powerful. And I think investing in accounting is a huge part of that.
For a new company that's considering software, I would just encourage you to take your time. There are more options out there today than there ever have been, and it's overwhelming. And everybody looks great online. There's a lot of slick salespeople that are going to tell you everything you want to hear, but at the end of the day, does the software actually function? Does the accounting really work? Does the distribution work? Does the lead management work? Does the housekeeping work? Does the maintenance work? Do they have an owner portal that functions? Do the tools that they're saying that they have actually function and work? And the best way to do that is to get references and to call other companies. Now, it is a burden to reach out to another company and ask them to tell you about their experience with their software, but there's a lot of folks that are willing to do it. So just take your time, do your due diligence, make sure you understand everything about the software platform, including how they do their billing. Do you get everything for the price that's been advertised, or do you buy a base system and then every single thing you need to do, it's an extra $1,000 here, $2,000 there, another $1 a unit there, right? Do your homework and do the research to find out what you're really getting for the platform and what's all included with the pricing that you've been provided. And then once you've done that, take the time to go through the demonstrations, watch the accounting demos, watch all the presentations, and really understand what you're getting for the service. How many partners are they integrated with? Are you able to use the companies that you want to use in the future through partner relationships and through distribution and other tools? So it's just really, you've made it this far, up to 10 properties by using spreadsheets and QuickBooks. You're starting to lose your mind a little bit. Just take your time and make sure that you do the homework to find out which system is the best fit for your business and know ultimately what your long-term goals are.
To add a little bit to the accounting side of things, so a lot of systems will start off by just doing a link to QuickBooks, and they think that that's accounting, and it is accounting. The problem is that it's operating accounting, and it's not trust accounting, and about 50% of the states require you to have a fiduciary responsibility because you fall under real estate. And a fiduciary accounting system, which is trust or escrow accounting, is very different than QuickBooks is. You can do it, but the reality is as you grow, it starts to get more and more complicated because often you're putting double entries in and so on. And there's chance of mistakes made. And unfortunately, if you get audited, they don't care if it's wrong and you made a mistake. They expect you to follow, the laws and so on. So it takes about 5 years for a software company. I've been doing this for a long time. Maybe it's gotten a little easier, but it takes about 5 years for a software company to really get their trust accounting proper, because it takes millions and millions of transactions. And as everybody has said here, this is a very complicated business. Everybody's doing things a little differently. It is getting more complicated as you guys offer more services to guests and to owners, and they all have an accounting component to it. To make sure that this stuff is all working properly. The second piece is for you to really look at who you are, what your niche is, where you want to go. If you're going to stay at 10, this is a lifestyle business, and you're just kind of hang out with have the 10 properties that are around you, you probably don't need something super significant and so on. But as you grow, historically about 30, 35 properties, all of a sudden accounting becomes, incredibly important, but also understanding your niche and where you want to go. I think I can say pretty safely, we are all systems that you typically grow into instead of out of, but there are a lot of systems where you can get in real cheap, get up and running real fast. But you know what? Do you want to really waste your time, trying to understand that system and then have to do a data port and really understand this industry at a higher level? I recommend you talk to us and grow into something if that's what you want to do as far as your niche.
Yeah, and one more thing I'd ask. Most of these systems are priced where when you're small, they're incredibly powerful and very affordable. So you get a lot of horsepower for a very small amount of money. Because you may be thinking, I can't afford one of these enterprise or moderate enterprise systems. You'd be surprised because most of their pricing model is either per unit or per a percentage of revenue. So if you're small, you're getting a tremendous amount of functionality that's been created because it's over a hosted system. So it's really, really, really a bargain when you're small. And you're better off getting on one of these systems early on, because the longer you wait, the harder it is and the bigger the growing pains are.
I think all of us have probably said this at some point during our demos is the amount of employees you have to hire to solve all the needs of your business. How much can technology offset of that? And when you're in that early stage of, do you hire a second employee? Do you hire a third employee? Having a system that really is that powerful, that can alleviate that much manual work is really, that's why we've always felt, instead of steering away from the small companies, we've tried to take on that challenge, and we've become obviously better at it over the years. But I mean, really, you can scale and streamline, and probably your systems as well, from 5 properties to 5,000 if you have the right tools.
I would disagree. I mean, not to be controversial, but there are systems that you cannot scale. Like, let's just be clear, you cannot, right? And we're not going to say any names, but if you've been through demos, and many of you have, there's systems that just cannot scale, and that's okay. They've got a place too. But I think going back to the question of what's the advice or whatever it is, in implementing software, buying new software, it does come down to people management and change management, because at the end of the day, you're turning levers and you're moving widgets, and you're hoping to get to where you were before with some added benefit. But a lot of it is so much, like we just did an implementation with the company down here. I'm just being honest, like there was some things that didn't go so well, right? And a lot of that was around change management and training, and to the point said, how does the company respond? Well, we flew 3 executives and 2 other people down, including our chief architect, and spent 3 days or 2.5 days with this team to make sure that, they were taken care of and that the system worked, because the system itself wasn't necessarily the issue. It was the change management. It was the training of the people. And you don't want to lose your best people, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to put the software in, you're trusting that the software companies aren't going to screw it up, and your people are going to get so pissed off that they quit and go to someone else and say it's a complete shit show, right? And so that's, I think, the biggest thing is I could say is just, it's not just buying software, it's change management, it's people management. And is that company, not just the software scale, can that company scale to take care of you?
Right, but completely agree in the sense that some software companies can't scale you from 5 to 5,000, but the property manager can scale from 5 to 5,000 with the right tools.
Right.
So being that said, I don't think the small company market should be ignored by this group.
And to kind of reiterate a little bit of that, so, I mean, we tend to deal with bigger companies, but out west, most of the companies are far, far smaller than that. I've got a company in Vail. He's got 25 properties. He probably makes more than some of the companies that we have that have 500 properties on the in Alabama and so on. So it's not necessarily based off of the number of properties. It's often based off of the services, the quality of the property, the models, and so on. So
I hate to do it, but we are out of time. I know it's another conversation that could go a really long time.